Okay, this is the second part of my video. The first part was more about experience of what I saw for myself, and this part is about research that I found. So, I'm going to go ahead and read something that I found about. It's in my annotated bibliography, but these are things that I actually saw to be true. So, I found various websites, and they were very helpful. They told me that it's easy to write poetry, but it's harder to actually perform them in the spoken word sense. Spoken word came about in the 1990s on the hip hop scene, like MTV raps and things like that, and it was a new form of poetry. But honestly, this is the first form of poetry because back in the day when there was no written language, spoken word was honestly the way to pass down stories to others. Like in Native Americans, they would like have verbal stories, and they set it to a rhyme and rhythm, and that's how they taught it to their children, so their children can pass it down to their children, and so on and so forth. So my first source was a website type thing by Amy Madison. It's called A Verbal Aesthetic Notes on Spoken Words. And in the website, she had powerful points like the things that you need in order to like portray and actually like involve yourself into spoken word the proper way. And she had things saying like the importance of an audience, the power of accessibility, common form, style, and page. These are all things that everyone knows, but it's not like everyone is not used. Like every one of those elements are not used because there's no rules to spoken word poetry. It's just guidelines. And in the same article, she said that there are various steps that you can take. Like I guess it's kind of like poetry for dummies. But she said that anyone can do it. You know what I mean? Like it's from a child singing a little song that she made up in her head. That can be spoken word poetry, or even like a hum that you have in your head or a sing that you sing in your head, that can be spoken word poetry too. It's all how you view it. There's no right or wrong way to do it as long as it's coming from your heart and your soul and your emotion. You can't write a poem for the hell of it and think it's going to be spoken word poetry because it has no emotion behind it, and that's not how we do it. So, another thing that I found is in Mark Magaza's spoken word movement, the spoken word movement in the 1990s, in quotation. Um, is saying that oral poetry was not necessarily replaced by written poetry, but the focus did shift away from immediacy of reading the work aloud to the more profitable and longer lasting opinion of getting the poems published. This is basically saying like is the dumbed down version is saying basically written poetry was done to make money, and spoken word poetry is not. It's not basically straying away. It's just saying that they're not publishing this in books to be sold to anyone. They're doing it for their own convictions. You know what I mean? And spoken word poetry is like in your face. It's blunt. It's honest. In other, in some ways, it's like a way to make sure the emotion that you intended is conveyed. Because in regular written poetry, it's kind of like you read the page and it's like, oh, okay. You might not know how they're feeling. You might not know the emotion that they want you to know, but it's like it's kind of ambiguous. But spoken word poetry is in your face. It's rambunctious. If they want you to be angry, they're gonna make you angry. If they want you to be upset, if they want you to cry, they're gonna make you cry, just because of how they have a rhythm and music to their own style. So that's another thing. Spoken word poetry is done sometimes, in ways like for competition, you would say, to get more publicity. It's not necessarily for money because the prizes aren't really big. It's sometimes like a spot on a show or like anything under the sun. Like there's shows like Def Poetry Jam and Poets for the Useless. Something. It's a show that comes on HBO. It's really cool. I actually watched it on Hulu, but it's a show. It's like they all come in like an intimate setting. There's no spotlight. There's no dim lights on the crowd. But it's like when they go in there, it's kind of like a kind of like telling stories to your family. You know what I mean? Like if you tell your mom about the sad story about school, she's gonna cry with you, and that's kind of the whole purpose of not dimming the lights on the audience and not raising the lights on the actual performer. So that was pretty cool. In Jenna Schmark's Matricule Monday spoken word, the artist spoke slam poetry. Um, she has an opinion that says, now, might seem or look easy, but it's extremely hard. Not only do poets write meaningful lyrics, they must practice and rehearse their lines meticulously. Great verses with powerful meanings will only get a slammer so far. The power of the piece is mostly from the poet's delivery, which is very true. I've seen for myself poets stumble over their words and get so frustrated you can see the red in their face, and they try again and again and again to get it right. And as soon as they get it right, it's like a different atmosphere. You can tell that they're telling you a story and they want you to know exactly what they mean or how they do. Hi.
What's up?
And actually have someone here. Come here. Come here. This is my poet that's gonna be doing my interview for me. But yeah.